hidden treasures of the 119th Psalm. Well, more than amazing to me, we are already on the 100th episode of Hidden Treasures of the 119th Psalm. And we are now transitioning from the yud onto the hoof. And I thought it would be a great time to, review a bit and go back before we start on the hoof. Because it's so beautiful what all has gone on. And I hope if you've been listening a long time that you'll follow along, and this won't be too much review. But if you haven't, it might be helpful to know we started with these 10 different words that are in that PDF that are at the show notes that are repeated time and again to try to give us some understanding of where we're going. And then, of course, we have 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet, and each letter has 8 verses. And so, just to kind of go back, we started off with the Alef. And as we talked about, the Alef is sort of the father or the wisdom figure there, and that he is building the next letter always. The letter that you're on is always kind of building the next letter. It's an absolutely beautiful thing. And it's doing it with 7 anointings of wisdom, understanding, counsel, might, knowledge, fear of the Lord, and delight of the fear of the Lord. Then when you get to the 8th verse, it's kind of like the miracle verse, the anointed, of that to get to the next letter verse. So, clearly the Aleph is building through its wisdom the house that becomes the Bet, which is, house, kingdom, understanding. They all kind of go together like, Aleph goes with father and wisdom. But so the Bet is the house and the understanding, and after that you move on to the next letter, which is the Gimel. And the Gimel is the rich man that is going to be eventually chasing after the poor man, which is the Dalet, to give him what was stolen. But that rich man also, as you can see in the second half of the verses, when you get rich, you have a tendency to get proud. And so, you deal with that in the Gimel section as you go from the Gimel to the Dalet being built by the Gimel because he's given back what was stolen. And interestingly, the door, the Dalet, is this doorway to spirituality, which comes through humility. And so this humility is required in order to receive what the Gimel wants to give it, right? Because we got to ask or we got to desire something we don't have in order to get it. And when you do that, then that Dalet, this doorway, builds the next beautiful letter, which is the Hey. Because once the Dalet receives that which was given to it by the rich man, it then can express, in which the Hey is this letter of expression. It's the second letter in, God's most holy name there that the Jews won't even speak. And so that Hey is expression. And, that expression as we go through it, and just beautiful, beautiful verses in the Hey, speaking of how God's expression is going to build his kingdom, going clear back to the very beginning. It all works together. And so this expression leads to the next letter that is going to be this continual mercy, continual loving kindness, and all that comes down in the Vav. Because Vav is like the and the continuation. So the Hey is expressing itself to be able to come so that God can pour his blessing out through the Vav, which is Jacob's ladder coming down a straight line. And through that Vav and keeping his law continuously forever and ever, and all those wonderful verses, the Vav then needs to be reflected back, because after God gives all this to us, then we reflect it back in the Zion. And so the Zion has everything to do with remember, as you can see throughout those verses, and it's remembering all the stuff the Vav brought down, right? But as it's building together, they become united in the next letter, which is the Het. And the Het is this picture of marriage, this wedding canopy, as we've talked about, and you can see immediately that the first verse has to do with, the Lord is our portion, because we've been, married, and once, you you have this beautiful marriage. What does that include as we become the bride of Christ? And just absolutely beautiful stuff there with the het, which if you have a good union, the het was going to mean that somebody's going to get pregnant. And the tet is the next letter, and it's definitely pregnant. It's the letter with all sorts of good potential, and it's hidden good. And so many of those verses had to do with affliction that was actually being used for our own good. And so, and one thing God has tons and tons and tons of is goodness. And so, the het leads to this baby in the womb, so to speak, of the tet. And when that baby is born, it becomes the hands of God, which is the yud, which is the letter that we just finished. And this yud is the little that means a lot. It's the God spark. It's the thing that's inside that baby that when you look in their eyes is just magical. Absolutely amazing, this yud, this hands of God. And so as we move now to the hoof, from the yud, the baby is now going to be crowned with intelligence and this sense of mindfulness and this sense of longing, okay? And so as we move to this first verse of the hoof, the idea of this is going to be the wisdom of the hoof. And so verse 81 says, "My soul fainteth for thy salvation, but I hope in thy word." And really cool, when you look at the actual Hebrew of this verse, it's truly amazing that all it really is 5 words, okay? And essentially the word is fainteth, which has to do with a deep longing that you have in your super consciousness. You may not even be aware of it, but the whole idea of the hoof has a lot to do with this consciousness that's above your head, this crown, because it looks like a crown or the palm of your hand. And so when you look at a yarmulke on a Jew's head, this is the idea of the hoof. This is this super consciousness that's above your regular intellect, okay? And it has to do with desire is a huge motivator, and it's actually above your intelligence, because when you desire something strongly enough, then you go after it to the point that you develop the intelligence in order to be able to get it, and that's kind of the idea of what the hoof is. And so when he says he fainteth for salvation, when you look at that in Hebrew, here's this deep, deep longing, but the word salvation, as you may know, is Yeshua. So it's like Yeshua being the name of Jesus, right? So it's like my soul is just fainting, longing for Jesus. I mean, it makes perfect sense that after this hands of God, where the next level of this thing is going to be this super consciousness that the desire is for Jesus, okay? And where it says, so it's my soul fainteth for thy salvation. It's the soul. So in Hebrew, it goes fainteth salvation soul, which is your nefesh, which is, of course your soul is longing for Jesus. And it says, in thy word I hope. So again, it's just 2 other words that have to do with the debar, which is a word that means word. It's one of the 10 words in the PDF that we were talking about there, and then the word hope. And so what a beautiful, beautiful thing that, again, when you put this up, Jesus is the word, okay? And he's every single one of these letters. And here we have the wisdom of the hoof, right? And so this wisdom is going to be that, wow, I mean, if your soul longs for Jesus, where are you going to find him? By hoping in the word. I mean, it's just like, there you go. The wisdom of that is beyond just cool. So as you see the progression, of course, it's really, really neat where we're headed, and I'm so excited to take the journey with you as we're coming in on the 11th. The hoof is the 11th letter, so this is going to be the exact halfway point as we finish these 8 verses on the hoof. So I hope you're enjoying the ride as much as I am, and we'll look forward to tomorrow.